got
Hi.
Billie Holiday behind you. Is that right? Am I
Oh yeah,
seeing?
but yeah, that is Billie Holiday.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, no, it's
Favorite of yours?
yeah. So I've got Billie Holiday and Al Green on my wall, and we did have
Oh,
Luther Vandross because we had all the songs from our wedding days records on our wall with me and my wife. But if Luther Vandross fell off the wall, I don't know if that's a kind of sign, but yeah.
just as long as Billie Holiday hangs on, everything's going to be all right.
Exactly, that's my way of thinking too. I'm going to start because I know I haven't got too long by just saying I loved the movie. I watched it this morning actually, and I mean I haven't seen anything like this ever before, which is, you know, I watch 300 odd movies a year, so to be able to say that in itself is quite something. I was wondering, with that in mind, just because I guess when it comes to kind of like selling a project, you know, like I've never seen a film like this. I don't know what box I would put it under. I don't know how I would describe it to my friends, but obviously when you're kind of trying to pitch it and get funding or trying to get this movie made, you've got to speak to people and sell the movie. I just wondered if that was tricky for you to kind of condense it into one sentence in a bid to try and get people on board.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. That truly means so much to me. And we really tried to do something very peculiar with the process in this film. So, you know, that is what I said to people is that, you know, we're going to attempt this impossible thing, which is we're going to attempt to keep my father alive forever through cinema. And so I knew it was a doomed mission on one level. So sort of accepting these contradictions in it was part of the pitch. So I did say, I'm going to make a film with my dad. We're going to work with stunt people and we're going to kill my dad over and over again until he really dies. And then people are like so shocked they laughed, you know? And so I think the impossibility is implicit in it in a certain way. And the other thing I did, like, it's so interesting when you say pitch, because, you know, the previous film I made, Camera Person, we were unable to ever pitch it. We weren't able to make a trailer until the film was finished. And we felt very unsure while we were making it. But then the way it was received in the world was such an affirmation that if we truly do things in a process-oriented way that is experimental and is bold, then something will emerge. And I was sort of willing to trust that something meaningful would emerge, but I was not interested in knowing what it would be. So I basically had crazy discussions with all the people that I talked about the film with. I asked them, have you thought about your own death? What death would you wish to have? So like, Stefan, have you ever thought about your own death? Do you know how you would like to die?
No, I was thinking obviously this when I was watching the movie, and even I haven't really thought about my own death, but I have definitely thought about my own funeral before.
Oh, wow. What do you want?
But it's more just like choosing kind of musical choices and stuff like that.
Well, you're just going to do the playlist for your own funeral.
Yeah.
You totally should.
Yeah. I think I should. But because my uncle was a director, and when he died, because he was terminally ill, he was able almost to like direct his final project from like sort of beyond the grave, because he kind of everything he kind of put there was sort of almost like very meticulously placed, and all the music and stuff like that.
Right.
And it was almost like his final kind of stage production, but obviously he wasn't there.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. What an inspiration.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm sure everyone was really sad that he wasn't there when it happened.
Yeah.
Right. Which is sort of what had happened for me with my mom's funeral. Like, we really did it the way she would have wanted it. And then I just remember this feeling of like epic bewilderment, like, oh my God, where is she to see what we've done? You know? Okay, I have a challenge for you, Stefan.
Okay.
You gotta put the records for your funeral on the wall with the records from your wedding, right? Like,
oh, that's a good idea.
What if you pick those records? Like, that would be such an interesting thing to do.
I mean, there might even be a crossover. But,
hopefully they would, right?
Yeah.
But I think, you know, this is the kind of discussion that I just got straight into with anyone I asked whether they want to work on the film, because, you know, early on when I was talking and thinking about the project, I said, well, if I die, and then someone just laughed out loud at me and they're like, oh, really? You're not going to die? And I was like, we're all so deeply in denial. Like, we can barely confront our parents' death, let alone imagine our own deaths, right? And yet, as I certainly know from working on lots of documentaries, really unexpected things happen that are wildly out of our control. And, this pandemic is one of them that we're sort of globally caught like, oh, didn't see that coming. So I would never, it wasn't a pitch. It was just these conversations about denial, death, absurdity. And everyone sort of saying, really? Is your dad game to do this? And I would be like, yeah, he is game to do it.
Yeah, because obviously a lot of this is about kind of coming to terms and understanding a parent's death. But do you think that in some ways you learn a lot about yourself and your own relationship with death from making this project?
I mean, I think that's still to come, frankly. There was so much to work with here. I didn't expect that I was needing to get my mom into the film. I did know I have these obsessions. I have an obsession with the concept of indelible images.
I was going to ask, just following on from that. I mean, you mentioned the stuff, obviously, including your mum being in it as well. I mean, it is such an incredibly personal film for you. Did you have were there ever any moments where you had any reservations, where you just went, hang on, I'm putting so much of myself out there into the world, or was that something that was very much part of the point to this project?
The camera saying, I hadn't shot any of that footage thinking about myself, like I had shot it on behalf of other films. And then when we went sort of digging and looking for this old footage to put in a film that would be a memoir, I was so amazed that I was present in the footage. And that film felt very personal, and I felt very self-protective. I felt very uncomfortable revealing my contradictions, my questions. And then the film came out and I realized, like, oh, that film is me and isn't me. It's a film, and I still have all of my privacy. I'm still so much more than that film. It's a glimpse into something, and it's very real for me. And so that film really liberated me. And I was like, even this, this film is an hour and a half. I have a 54-year-old relationship with my father. It's so much bigger. There's so much more to it than can ever be contained in the film. But also, I just honestly, frankly, was really desperate. Like, by the time I realized I had the budget to make the film and could make the film, I could see the dementia starting to happen. And I just was like, I've got to hang on and, like, Frankenstein him back together. I got to keep him. So it was like this very, this act motivated by how much I know about the decline that can happen through dementia. Yeah, it's like a race against the clock.
Yeah, I've got a friend who's got a parent suffering with dementia, and they did a kind of thread on Twitter of lots of the things that their parents had said or got mistaken, and loads of people commenting, giving their own sort of anecdotes and stuff, and everyone was kind of laughing, and I could feel this sense of people finding a kind of comfort in the fact that they were all actually sharing stories about their parents and finding the humorous side to some of it. And just wondering, because this film has a kind of light touch, how important is it that people who know someone suffering with dementia and stuff are able to find the more irreverent, almost funnier aspects, if that's not an offensive way to put it?
It's not offensive at all. I mean, it's honestly like the thing that saves you. And it's not true for everybody with dementia. I mean, some people just are like angry and scary. And if you get lucky and you have someone who, like, can do some laughs in it. I mean, there are a couple of stories that I tell about my mom. One of them is, we're sitting in the back of a car. Her leg is up against my legs, and she starts laughing really hard. And my mom had this sort of perceptual situation in her Alzheimer's where she might think that a shadow was a hole, or, she might think up was down, or what was in front of her was behind her. So she starts, like, laughing hysterically. And I'm like, what is going on? And she's really, she leans over and she's like, I don't know how this happened, but I've got a third leg. And so, like, it's just like extreme absurdity. And so there are moments when it's just like, it's like a knife to the heart, because it's like my dad being like, I'm your little brother, and you're just like, it's this thing that you would never have thought of your parent saying, and it hurts. And you're sort of like, that moment with my mom where I'm almost angry. I'm like, say my name, like, you still know me, but there is like a a playfulness in this loss of language, in the change in perception. But, you know, I think there's so much grieving and loss going on that one is just, you know, hanging on, but like, give me something funny, give me something to laugh about, which is something I have encountered in the places in the world where people are really struggling with long-term difficulty. You know, like when you encounter poverty or you're in a place of like ongoing genocide, there's a lot of people who just have to live through the suffering and are just miserable and angry. And then there are other people who are like hilarious.
Yeah, because I was wondering too. I mean, it's though a completely wildly different film. The Act of Killing, which is obviously a fantastic documentary, it also uses kind of theatrics and kind of stages death in a kind of bid, I guess, for people to understand and to maybe to grieve. And I know obviously the films are they're very different tonally and what they're about. But what do you think it is about that process and kind of staging death which helps us understand it?
Yeah, you know, I adore that film. I think it's a really, you know, it was a breakthrough for a lot of us, I think. And having worked on lots of films about genocides, it's incredibly difficult to film with perpetrators. You know, sort of the bulk of body of material that we have is with victims. And I've always sort of wondered throughout my career, it's like, how do you make a film with perpetrators? And that film was such a sort of a bold gambit into that territory. And, you know, I think there is this way in which we do things as humans. Some of the things that we do are awful and shameful, and then we rewrite the story for ourselves. We tell a different narrative, or we have a narrative of who we are, even if it's in contradiction with what we've done, right? And so turning that into this sort of theatrical performance, turning it into a movie, all of that, I think, sort of toys in this territory of, you know, we both wish to be unseen because we have shame, and we wish to be seen because we feel like no one's recognizing us for how hard we try, for how hard our lives were. So that sort of tension, I think, is in all of cinema. The wish to be unseen, the wish to be seen, sort of what cinema uncovers. So I didn't think about Act of Killing consciously. A couple of people have brought it up now as the film comes out, and they're totally on target. Like, I thought about a lot of films in making this film, and I'm certain that it informed this film also, because it's like, you can do things with cinema. You know, you can, like in that film, you know, sort of convince people that like it's not even convince them, but like you're on their team, and then also be there in the moment when, you know, that moment where the man is retching, and his body is remembering having killed people. It's like one of the most extraordinary moments in cinema. And that was only possible because of this sort of complicity between the director and them throughout. It's like you can, like, we're in this together, and then suddenly that person suddenly feels safe enough to reveal the most shameful thing, right, in a sincere way, not in a bravado kind of way. So I know that the tools of cinema sort of give us different points of access. So part of how I imagined the film was that I both go in with documentary tools. I also go in with fantasist tools, with fiction, with VFX. You know, I go in with all these different tools that give me different ways to access the different aspects of this.
And so it's fascinating sort of process. But my final question, because I know I've just gone over time, was just sort of double question really, which was how is Dick at the moment, and have you sat down and watched the movie with him?
So he's watched it literally hundreds of times.
Yeah. He
loves the movie. He watches it and can't remember he's watching it. He visits his house. He sees his friends. We talked on the phone yesterday. So he's now in a dementia care facility because the dementia has advanced. And, you know, I said, Dad, you're in the New Yorker, you know, like you're in the New York Times, you're in the Guardian. And he's like, oh, that's crazy. All I really care about is I can talk to you. And it was just like, oh, that's all I really care about too.
Yeah. Well,
so he is himself. Yeah, he is himself, his wonderful self.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for
Stefan,
sharing.
I'm dying to know you have to send me a picture when you get the, like, at least put one album up on the wall for your funeral. I really want to know what it's going to be.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey